One move by Russia could completely upend the global financial system and shift the balance of power in the world. Is this why America isn't mentioned in Bible prophecy? Hey guys, Britt here. Welcome to End Times Bible Prophecy. Make sure to hit the subscribe, like, and share buttons. And that's what we're going to talk about today, is there is a move that Russia can make right now, which will completely change the global financial system in numerous ways, way more than we can get into in this single video. We've talked about this in past videos. I'll put links to those in the description below. I think it was as World War III started already, is Putin about to win, and then the most recent one was, is an economic Pearl Harbor about to destroy America? So we're touched on a lot of these subjects, but this is a particular move that Russia can make that could completely change everything, and it's in ZeroHedge. So we're going to look at this. This was the top headline on ZeroHedge last night, and then this morning. Now it's moved down a little bit, but it's titled Zoltan Pozsar, Gold to Soar, Crush Western Banks When Putin Unveils Petro Gold. Now Zoltan Pozsar is a financial analyst who works for Credit Suisse. He writes on these types of subjects, and the subheadline here says, Russia's decision to link gold to oil could bring gold back as a settlement medium and increase its intrinsic value sharply. Banks active in the paper gold market would face a liquidity shortfall. We're going to talk about what that means, how that will impact the Western financial system, what it means for the war with Russia, why this war has been going on, I believe, the whole time. We've talked about this for months on end. There's many objectives to the war in Ukraine from Russia's standpoint. There are special assets the United States has there that they want to take out. They want to try to drive a wedge between NATO and the transatlantic alliance, break it apart. There's food, agricultural assets there that they could take, territory, all of those things. But I believe the number one objective from the very beginning for Vladimir Putin was to break the back of the Western financial system, and in particular, US dollar power. We'll just call it US dollar power, US financial power. And we're in the process of seeing that. We've been talking about many ways that that's happening, but I think this is just the latest in how this is going to happen, and this could be really the financial nuclear bomb that sets off the end of the monetary system that's dominated the globe for the last 50 years. So we're going to look at this article. Again, this is a premium article, meaning it's behind a paywall, so I'm not going to read through that. But again, this came from Zoltan Pozsar through a memo to internal clients, an internal memo they gave to big clients that got leaked out. So there's other places we can look at this. So we can come here and we come to this article right here. This is from the deep dive. It says Zoltan Pozsar, gold at $3,600 is not improbable if U.S. refills reserves with Russian oil. And the first part of this article goes on to talk about the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. The United States has been emptying that in order to keep the price of gasoline from going too high, really for the benefit of the White House and Democrats at election time. But now that the election is over, they're going to stop that, and they've talked about refilling it at lower prices than when they were emptying it. And so this gets into how they might do that. Again, I'll put the link to this article in the description if you want to go read it in its entirety. But to me, it really picks up when we get right about here where it's talking about, says, even if Russia is already selling oil at $60 per barrel, the same price set for the cap. So the G7 tried to cap Russian oil. The free market is what it is. They aren't going to, it says Vladimir Putin might still not be interested in selling at capped prices out of principle. So if the free market is what the cap is, he may still say, you know what, I don't want to do it just because you're telling me that. I don't want you to control me. Something like that. But this is talking about how India has been buying discounted Russian oil on the open market. And the United States might look to refill the strategic petroleum reserve using oil that they buy from India that's really Russian oil. So they could say, well, we didn't buy Russian oil, but they just used India as a middleman to do that. So here it says, if Russian oil is re-exported from India to the United States, Putin probably won't like that out of principle either. And he may not want Russian oil in underground salt caverns along the U.S. Gulf Coast and be able to refill the strategic petroleum reserve. So if that happens, then he might say payments will only be accepted in gold, not dollars or rupees, noted Pozsar. So in this scenario, he's saying that Vladimir Putin and Russia say, sure, we'll sell you this oil, but not in dollars, not little pieces of paper, not currency. We want physical gold. And so that's where the story really takes a turn, because we've talked about this before. We actually talked about this months ago. And I said, I think that's where all of this is leading. And now we're starting to see confirmation of that. So this says, at current market prices, the cap of $60 per barrel for Russian oil equals the price of a gram of gold. In a hypothetical scenario where the U.S. values Russian oil exports at this price and Russia then pegs a barrel of oil at a gram of gold, the U.S. dollar effectively gets revalued versus Russian oil. And that's something that a lot of people will miss. But we're going to get to why that's important. It says, but if the West is looking for a bargain, Russia could give one the West can't refuse, a gram for more. Meaning, if Russia countered the price peg of $60 with offering 2 barrels of oil at the peg for a gram of gold, gold prices double. So here they're saying, right now you can buy a gram of gold for $60, you can buy a barrel of oil from Russia for $60, but how about we give you 2 barrels of oil for 1 gram of gold? Well, at current gold prices, that's $30 oil, $30 a barrel oil. Who could turn that down, right? It says, given this scenario, the author said that Russia won't probably increase its production to match this hypothetical demand, but would ensure just enough so production doesn't get shut. And most important, gold going from $1,800 to close to $3,600 would increase the value of Russia's gold reserves and its gold output at home and in a range of countries in Africa. Crazy? Yes. Improbable? No, Pozsar added. The contributor added that Russia's decision to link gold to oil would be instrumental. And again, this paragraph sums it up. I always say we're at the end of this article, and I always say the best part of the article is usually the end. And to me, this is the whole summation, and this is why ZeroHedge put this at the top, because that was in their subheading, was this paragraph right here. It says the contributor added that Russia's decision to link gold to oil would be instrumental to bring gold back as a settlement medium and increase its intrinsic value sharply. What in the world does that mean? What that means is it's effectively saying it's the end of the fiat system. This fiat currency system where we just print pieces of paper and trade them for things that have real value, items of real value. Oil, natural gas, agricultural commodities, any number of commodities around the world, or manufactured goods, anything that you want to buy, you're trading these pieces of paper that have just printed values on them. And they lose their purchasing power over time as the governments print more and more of them. But if you revalue to gold, you're essentially going back in a way to a gold standard. But here they're just talking about oil for physical gold. but it would increase demand for gold significantly, which is why it says increase its intrinsic value sharply. So the value of gold would be seen in terms of oil, and the oil it could obtain. And so you would have massive demand for gold. So here's where it gets interesting. It says, however, this scenario runs a risk of liquidity shortfall for banks that are active in the paper gold market, as all banks active in commodities tend to be long over-the-counter derivative receivables hedged with futures. Again, what in the world does that mean? Well, we've also talked about this before in the past, and I think we're good with this article. What does that mean? So there are these paper markets in the United States. So you have the COMEX, the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, you have the London Bullion Market Association in London. These are the places where gold is held for the Western financial system, gold and other commodities. But they trade these little pieces of paper, and that's how we set the price. So if we go to CNBC, we can see, gold currently is valued at $1,792.80 per ounce. That price is set by people trading contracts on these exchanges. The problem is, most of the time, these contracts, they are for delivery of the gold, but people like to trade the contracts. They like to have exposure to the price of gold, or they want to think that they own the gold, but they don't often ask for delivery of the gold. They don't often say, all right, I'm turning in my contract, I want physical delivery of the gold. They just roll the contract over to a later date. So why is that important? Well, over time, the United States and other Western nations have managed to protect their fiat currency system, by suppressing the price of gold. Because if gold goes to its true value, people would wake up to inflation. They would wake up to, these pieces of paper aren't worth what I thought they were. And so they've been suppressing those prices by these paper contracts, meaning there are many pieces of paper linked to each ounce of gold. So for instance, let's say you go to one of these places and we're going to make this really simplified. They have a single ounce of gold, right? And you say, I want to buy that ounce of gold. Well, you can pay them, $1,792, whatever it was. And they go, here's a piece of paper. This is a contract that says you own this piece of gold. And if you want delivery of it, we will give it to you. And you go, that's great, but you know what? I don't want delivery because I think it's safer in your vault with your armed guards and your security, so I'm going to keep it with you. I don't want to have that at home. So I'm going to keep it with you. Plus, it makes it really easy for me to sell this contract. I can do that a lot faster than I can take the physical gold and move it to the person that's buying it. So it just makes it more convenient. So I'll hold this piece of paper and you hold my gold. And everybody's happy, right? But then what happens is the exchange then says, hey, here's a second person that wants to buy some gold. And they take the same ounce of gold and they sell that person a paper contract that says they own the same ounce of gold that supposedly you just bought. So I would call that fraud. In the banking world, they call it, I guess, rehypothecation or fractional reserve banking or whatever you want to call it. But to me, that's fraud. You're selling the same gold. You're telling people they own the same piece of gold. And nobody knows how many of these contracts exist. I've heard anywhere from 10 contracts for every ounce, 50, 100, all the way up to 500. So all these people, it's a game of musical chairs, and all these people think they own this gold that they don't really own. Except unlike musical chairs where you might have 10 people walking around 9 chairs and one person's left out, here you might have 100 people walking around 1 chair. When the music stops, they can't all sit down. So how does this tie into what we're talking about? Well, let's go back to that article and read what they're saying. It says, this scenario runs a risk of liquidity shortfall for banks active in the paper gold market. So these banks that are saying that here you go, you own this gold. Well, if Russia were to come out and say, for instance, it's $1,800 for an ounce of gold. We will sell 100 barrels of oil for 1 ounce of gold, right? So effectively, they're saying we will sell a barrel of oil for $18, because that's what it would be. You could buy an ounce of gold for $1,800, go give it to Russia. They give you 100 barrels of oil. Now you've got $18 a barrel oil. That wouldn't be a problem for Russia. Russia's average cost of production is around $9 a barrel. It's the lowest in the world. At that point, the United States has two alternatives. One is they could say we're going to protect these paper gold markets because we don't want people waking up to the reality that our currency is worthless. And so we're going to continue to suppress the price of gold, in which case the new price for a barrel of oil is $18. And the average cost of production for the U.S. oil industry is around $40. So now the U.S. domestic oil production is completely destroyed. That whole industry is destroyed, and it's a national security emergency. So that's unlikely to happen. So what would likely happen is they would say, well, the price of gold is going to have to reflect this new reality. And so people are going to go and they're going to buy those ounces of gold, and they're going to demand the physical delivery. And so that they can exchange it for the oil. But when they do that, what they're going to find is, rather than the price simply going up, the COMEX, the LBMA, these Western financial markets that deal in this paper gold are simply going to collapse. They do not have the gold. If you want a further illustration, let's take a look at this. Maybe this is a good visual illustration of the whole fiat system and how this used to work. So this is a $20 bill from, I don't know, turn of the 20th century. This is how it used to be. It used to be you carry this around. There's this little gold mark here, and it says $20 in gold coin payable to the bearer on demand. So you could take one of these to the bank, and you could get a $20 gold coin, which was equal. It had a set weight, an intrinsic value to it. So this was something you could trade. This currency was backed by gold, payable on demand. What does that same $20 bill look like today? Well, at least in 2009, this is what it looked like. I think it's changed again, but today's $20 bill is essentially the same. Where is that? You look at it again. So payable and gold coin payable to the bearer on demand. I don't see that on this one. That's because they don't do that anymore. Years ago, they stopped that. I mean, there was a whole process, but if you remember, Nixon closed the gold window in 1971. That effectively ended the Bretton Woods global monetary system the world had operated under since 1944. So he closed that because the gold wasn't there. People came to claim the gold. France said, sure, we've got all these dollars. Give us the gold. And we said, no, we're not going to do that because the gold's not there. And the same thing will happen if Putin does this. If he says, we're going to sell oil and we'll sell you, more oil. We'll give you a great deal. We'll give the world a great deal. We'll sell you twice as much oil as you could get for dollars if you just give us the physical gold equivalent. That will drive the price of gold up. That'll drive up demand for that gold. People are going to be going to these Western financial institutions that purport that they trade in gold and that you can go get it. And when people show up, it's essentially it's like a bank run. They all show up and say, give me my gold. And those exchanges have to say, sorry, you don't have it. But here in your contract, it says we can give you these pieces of paper. just like these fake $20 bills, we can give you this. And it's going to expose the Western financial system for the fraud that it is. these fiat currencies. And if there's any doubt that this stuff is coming, let's take a look at this article. This was also in ZeroHedge earlier today. It was just below that article. It's from Shift Gold. It says central banks start fourth quarter buying more gold. After adding a historically high amount of gold to reserves in the third quarter, and we talked about that a week or two ago, it was the highest level since 1967 when that Bretton Woods system was about to end, when France was demanding its gold just a few years before Nixon closed the gold window. This says central banks kicked off the fourth quarter buying more gold. According to data compiled by the World Gold Council, central banks globally added another 31 tons of gold to official reserves in October. Total central bank gold holdings are now at the highest level since 1974. Why is that important? Well, 1974 is when the U.S., in response to Nixon closing the gold window and in response to record inflation, because people awoke to the idea, well, this currency isn't backed by anything anymore. They're just printing it. It's really just worth the paper and ink that it has. That's when the petrodollar system was created, where the United States made a deal with Saudi Arabia. Oil was to be traded in dollars. It created demand globally for dollars, and it underpinned the US dollar. Oil underpinned the US dollar. And that is essentially the global monetary system that the world has operated under ever since. Now, this article says that central banks are accumulating gold at a pace they haven't since that time, since that shift from Bretton Woods to the petrodollar. Why are they accumulating gold now? I believe it's because they foresee that a new shift is about to take place from the petrodollar to, what do we have here? We've got ZeroHedge said, when Putin unveils Petro Gold. Let that sink in for a moment. So if Putin does what we just discussed him doing, gold will no longer be traded in dollars. It may be traded in dollars, but the price will be set in terms of gold. Because once you link gold, a specific amount of gold, to a specific amount of oil, that effectively sets the price. You can print dollars all you want, and the price, the nominal price may change, but it will be sold in terms of gold. And governments can't print gold. They can't print energy. They can't print food. We've talked about this in the past. They try to solve all these problems by printing currency, but they can't print real things. And when other countries start demanding, like the BRICS countries are, that they be paid for their real things in terms of real things, that poses a problem for the Western financial system, this fiat system that says we're going to trade little pieces of paper for real things. And all of a sudden, that comes to an end. The petrodollar is what gives the United States its power. It's how the United States has a vast military they're able to spend $1 trillion a year on and send it all over the world to project American military power. If the petrodollar becomes Petro Gold, then all of a sudden that power wanes significantly. It goes away. You can't just print currency without creating massive inflation, maybe even hyperinflation. And Putin knows this. I believe this is where this has all been going. The repercussions for the Western financial system are enormous. They're beyond the ability to talk about in this short video. But this would lead to chaos in Western financial markets. It would make the inflation of the past year just look like a little blip on a graph. We would see massive repricing all across the Western financial world, and we would see the power of the United States, the United Kingdom, Europe, Canada, Japan, Australia, all these Western countries fall relative to countries with real resources that create real things, countries like China, Russia, Brazil, India, South Africa, the BRICS nations, and those that want to join them, like Saudi Arabia. So we're seeing throughout this whole time, this whole war in Ukraine, this is what's, I believe, is the true objective of that war, and we're seeing it play out. So what does this have to do with Bible prophecy? Well, it would explain, think about the Gog of Magog war. There's no mention of the United States coming to Israel's aid. That could be for various reasons. But we know that the United States isn't mentioned in Bible prophecy anywhere, which means that their power, they cannot be the superpower they are today in those end time scenarios. I believe there's a number of reasons, again, why that power will wane, but this very well could be one of them, is if the United States loses this financial war, the dollar no longer becomes king, and more importantly, these central banks that are accumulating gold, in the past they accumulated U.S. debt. That U.S. debt, if they favor gold over U.S. debt, that means all these deficits, the United States has been living well beyond its means for a long time. All that ends. They either have to default on the debt or they have to print it away, which leads to massive inflation. So, again, we go to Ezekiel 38:39. No mention of the United States. There is mention of Russia. Right? So, Russian power, that indicates to me that they don't lose this war. They certainly aren't devastated or taken out by this war, unless all of this is way in the future and I'm way off. But I think that this very well could be the reason we don't see the United States mentioned in Bible prophecy, is because all of this is going to end their power. So again, we've talked about this in previous videos. If you haven't seen those, go back and watch those. I'll link to them in the description. Let me know what you think. Put in the comments what you think. Is this meaningful? Maybe I'm making a mountain out of a molehill and there's nothing to see here, but I don't think so. I think this is a very serious possibility that we could see oil revalued in terms of gold, and it will change the global monetary system and shift the balance of world power. So again, let me know what you think. Make sure to hit the like and share buttons. And guys, God willing, I'll see you tomorrow. Bye. If you want to learn more about the end times and Bible prophecy, make sure to sign up for my free monthly newsletter and get your copy of my free ebook, 7 Signs of the End Times. Just follow the link in the description to get your free book. Also, make sure to check out all of my books. Just look up Britt on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Apple iBooks, Google Books, Kobo, or anywhere books are sold. Thanks for watching today, and until next time, keep your eyes fixed on Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith.